Katrina and the Wild Hunt by T.K. Wilson. This is part 1 of a 2-part series. King Oberon was never well disposed to humans. That's why he began the Wild Hunt in the crystal-ridden hills of Rock City. He owed no allegiance to the house of King Finvara, and thus, in his own mind, he could do as he pleased. Oh, he wasn't cruel to men. He only treated them as he thought their deeds deserved. So while he might enchant the apples of a respectful farmer against pests, he might ruin the work of a dishonest builder or destroy equipment that poured pollution into the air and water. And as dishonesty and greed grew, so did his loathing for humans. His queen, Persephone, was ill-disposed towards human greed, but generally argued in favor of not causing harm to humans and living in what wild places were left to them. They had their lives, she would argue. There was no need to meddle in the lives of others. Persephone also took pity on the children she saw, as she had none of her own. Oberon said it was too dangerous to have children in their transient life. But there were days when Persephone's desire to have a child of her very own filled her heart so full that she could barely eat or sleep. Yard Wolf of Evermore marched on his rounds towards a little neighborhood of identical duplexes where Katrina Lawson lived, a lantern in his hand. She would be waiting for him with the big stein of hot cocoa she'd made for him, their own little ritual. And it was all he could have of Katrina's love. He loved her desperately, and he knew he could never love another in the same way. It was all he dreamed of, the little cottage in the old dryad garden, and Katrina as his bride. But it could never be. He was too ugly, too rough, too monstrous for Katrina. He climbed quietly to Katrina's veranda. It was dark inside the house. She always waited up for him. Always. His heart began to pound. What if someone had made off with her? What if Morthon or Hapthor had returned and taken her away? He dove to the floorboards and felt around for the rock that concealed Katrina's spare key. He found it, unlocked the door, and burst into the kitchen. He heard something like talking in the living room and made for the sound. He found Katrina asleep on her love seat, the television playing a black and white film. The ogre gave a loud sigh of relief, dropping to one knee beside the love seat. Katrina awoke, startled. "Who's there?" she slurred. "It's me. It's only me, Kitty." "Wolf?" Katrina pressed a hand to her chest. "Don't do that! You scared me to death." "You frightened me. You weren't there, and I thought—" "Oh." Katrina shut off the television, plunging the room into near darkness. Erdwulf set his lantern on the coffee table. The light filled the room as Katrina reached out for him. He accepted her embrace gratefully. "You're trembling, Wolf," Katrina said. "Yes, I was so frightened you can't think." She curled up trustingly in his arms. "Just breathe easy, nice and slow." Katrina knew how swiftly a fright could turn into a berserker attack, but she knew what to do to calm Erdwulf down. She slowly reached up towards his horns and ran her fingers across the rings. Then she pulled his head down close to her hair. "You're safe. It's safe." After a few minutes, Erdwulf shook himself and released Katrina. "Better? Much, thank you." A strange sound attracted their attention. "What was that? It sounded like a horn," asked Katrina, getting up off her sofa. She walked out to the kitchen and opened the blind. Erdwulf stood behind her as they watched a bright company pass through Katrina's backyard. First came long, lean greyhounds and huge, monstrously sized cats that looked like Maine Coons. The dogs and cats were followed by a great horned owl and a barn owl. Then came an elf man with long red hair and a crown on his head, seated on a white unicorn. And after him came an elf woman with a crown upon her black hair that fell across her unicorn's flank, and after them came a company of fairy people, mounted on various beasts, and some walking. "I don't recognize any of them," said Katrina. "That's the Wild Hunt. They roam from place to place and don't really associate with Evermore." "The Wild Hunt? Are we in danger?" "I've read—" "Oh, no. People were only in danger back in the old days, before the coming of the Yard Rice Prince. Before that, they were our people's funeral processions, and they did mean ill luck to the community, because if fairies were being killed, that meant the evil ones were gaining the upper hand. But now those who ride on the Wild Hunt are just out on a pleasure trip. King Oberon wouldn't mean any harm to anybody that he didn't deserve it. I've offered him alliances before, but he values his freedom too highly. Ardwolf shook his head. Much too highly, if you ask me. Queen Persephone rode along soberly behind her husband. He was jesting and laughing with his knights, but she hung back sadly. She was nearly sick with child-longing again. She hadn't wanted to ride tonight, but Oberon wouldn't hear of it, knowing the fresh air would do her good. He was right, she was starting to feel a bit better. And suddenly one of her cats gave a meow. She brought her steed to a halt. First one cat, then another, meowed and started off towards a nearby building, under construction and nearly finished. "What is it, darlings?" she said, pulling her steed off to the side to let the others pass. None were worried for her safety, for the queen's cats could well take care of her. Persephone followed the cats towards the building. 3 of the 5 sat next to a cardboard box, meowing for her, and over the sound of the cats she heard another sound, a baby fussing. She rushed over and looked into the box. Inside was a newborn baby, wrapped securely in a pink blanket. Next to the box was a large bag, and pinned to the baby was a note. The note read simply, "Please take care of my baby." Persephone's heart filled to bursting with joy. She scooped up the baby. Pink meant a little girl, a baby princess for her and Oberon. She grabbed the bag and slung it over her shoulder. It no doubt contained some things for the baby. "Hello, my love. I will be your mother now. Come, darlings, we must take your new sister to our lord." Persephone kissed the baby's brow and snuggled her to her chest. "My darling, my treasure, my love, my—" She stopped, looking at the baby. She needed a name. "What shall we call you, my love?" The baby was very fair-skinned and had bright red hair. "Red hair, sacred to my people, so very fair." She thought a little. "Finola, yes, after the daughter of Lear, Princess Finola of the Wild Hunt." Persephone carefully climbed back onto her unicorn and trotted at a speed her cats could match toward Oberon. When her people saw her speed, they cleared the way for her. Oberon heard her steed galloping towards her. "What is it, love?" She held out the baby. "We have a daughter." Oberon's face turned hard. "Where did you find that child?" "She was just put in a box. Her mother left a note asking for whoever found her to take care of her. The cats discovered her, and now she's ours." Oberon's face softened. "She's a human. We must put her in the keeping of her own people," said Oberon gently. "No. Please let me keep her. You know how much I wanted a child. She's our baby now, our Princess Finola." "You named her? What else should I do? She's my child." "She is not your child. She's some human's child, and she should go to be with her own people, not ours. She's innocent, Oberon. She's done nothing to deserve your hate. Our people have done enough to deserve my ire. Polluters of air, killers of trees, poisoners of water." Oberon's shouts scared the baby, who began to wail. "Shh, shh, shh, my pulse, shh, shh, shh. Your father is only angry with evil people." "I am not that child's father," hissed Oberon. "There's a place we can leave her in the safety where she will be cared for by humans." "I will not give her up, Oberon," said Persephone quietly. "What?" "You have denied me a child, and now that I have one, I will not give her up." Oberon and Persephone were well matched in every way, including strong will. The hunt came to a halt, and everyone was witness to this battle. The ladies all came up to stand behind the queen. Her owl landed on the unicorn's horn. "The queen's right," said Lady Helena, Persephone's chief lady-in-waiting. "Let her keep the baby. We'll make a better home for her than any human could. We'll all be her godmothers, won't we, girls?" The women all nodded. "We'll give her the best gifts, beauty and song and dancing. We can teach her to shoot. We'll make a regular Diana out of her. She'll want for nothing with us." "You ladies are forgetting one thing," broke in one of the knights. "Adama, the king's right hand. She's a human child. Have you forgotten what the humans have done, are doing, to us in this world?" "Why should that matter? She's an infant. She's not capable of doing anything." "The king is right. She should be with her own people." "Well, we disagree," said Helena. "Your Majesty, perhaps we should withdraw until the king's head is cooled. You'll soon see sense." Oberon turned to his wife. "Will you divide this court for the sake of a human child?" Persephone clutched the baby harder to her chest. "Yes, I will. Not even if you were to promise me a child of our own blood would I give her up. Finola is my firstborn, for my own blood or not. Fine. We will withdraw then until you see that I am correct, said the king. The members of the hunt looked at each other. They all loved each other as family, and there were several couples who had promised themselves to each other, but for the sake of peace they would follow their rulers, lord and lady, until they could reconcile. The king turned his steed, the men following him, leaving the queen and her ladies behind. The baby began to cry and clutch at the queen's hair. What is it, lovely? Perhaps she's hungry. The queen chewed her lip. How could she feed the baby? Helena, perhaps there's something in the bag that will help. She slipped it off her shoulder and handed it down. Helena opened the bag and dug around. Here are bottles, but there is no milk, which of course would be safest. She pulled out a can and read the label. Formula for milk replacement. Ah! But how do we make it? Asked another lady. It seems pretty straightforward, but perhaps there might be a human we could ask. Helena had to speak up over the baby's cries. I'm friends with Rosalba of Evermore, and she's mentioned a human woman, an elf friend, who might be able to help. She doesn't live far from here. Lead the way, good Helena, said the queen, dropping the reins of her unicorn to Helena. Then she turned her attention to Finola. Hush, my baby. Soon your tummy will be full. Katrina was roused by the sound of knocking at her door and the desperate cries of a baby. She got out of bed and stumbled to her back door. She looked out the peephole and gasped in surprise. It was the members of the wild hunt she'd seen earlier. She switched on her lights and opened the door a crack. What can I do for you? She asked carefully. Are you Katrina, elf friend? Asked the beautiful elf on her doorstep. I answer to that name, yes, she answered, following the instructions Erdwulf had given her. Her Majesty, Queen Titania of the Wild Hunt, and Her Royal Highness Princess of the Wild Hunt require your assistance, said Helena, using Persephone's other name to prevent mischief. What can I do for their highnesses? The Queen desires your help in nursing her infant. As you can plainly hear, Her Highness is very hungry. For the sake of the baby, Katrina opened the door. The Queen was assisted in dismounting and entered Katrina's home. She tried to look regal and noble, but she was so worried about the baby that it showed on her face. The rest of her entourage, owl and cat included, filtered in. The unicorn stood on the veranda. What can I do, your highness? Do you want somewhere private to nurse, or... Please show her what you found, Eileen, said the queen, using Helena's other name. Helena offered Katrina the formula. We don't know how this works exactly. Formula? What is... I will answer your questions later. Please, she's very hungry, begged the queen. Of course, of course. Katrina followed the instructions on the canister and quickly mixed a bottle of the formula and gave it to the queen, who began feeding the baby. She quickly quieted it to happy little noises. Now, your highness, can you tell me what's going on? Asked Katrina. It's very simple, really, said the queen. I found her abandoned with this bag of things and took her with me. She might have died out there. The queen offered Katrina the note. Her mother left this message. Katrina examined the note. This is a safe haven state. I wonder why she wasn't left at a hospital or a firehouse. Perhaps her mother intended to take her to one of these places, but could not for some reason, offered the queen. Katrina nodded. Technically speaking, I should tell the police she was found. Oh, please don't, cried the queen. I've been so longing for a child, and the Ardrai put one right into my arms. Please. Katrina sighed. Okay, I won't call the police right away. We'll see if we can figure this out, your highness. King Oberon pulled at the collar of his tunic. He'd already yanked off his torque in agitation. What was his wife thinking, picking up a child like that? It wasn't if he'd said he'd kill the infant. That would be abominable. But the human couldn't stay here with them. That was preposterous. Gentlemen, I feel in need of a drink. We shall see if the people of Evermore can assist us with that proposition. Adamach came to the king's side. Evermore, your highness. We may not be formal allies, and I may not approve of their mission, but they are a fairy, and I want to be around our own people. Erdwulf was just nodding off to sleep when he heard someone knock at his chamber door. A rather urgent knock. He rose and opened the door, revealing Cullen, his second-in-command. Cullen, is there something wrong? He muttered sleepily. It's King Oberon. He and all the men of his court are here. What? Erdwulf grabbed a tunic off a pile of clean washing that sat on his chair and threw it on. Why? Why is he here? He said he wanted a drink. Kaelin is breaking out the rosehip wine for him. It's the best we have, and there's not much of that. Erdwulf came into the dining hall to see Rosalba, their dryad friend, serving King Oberon some wine as he sat at the big trestle table. He appreciatively swirled the wine around his mouth before swallowing. Ah, excellent. Thank you, Rose. You're welcome, Your Majesty. I'm afraid we don't have much of it, only this one bottle. You were not expecting us. It is no trouble. Erdwulf bowed as he entered. Your Majesty. Ah, Commander, good to see you. Erdwulf squinted a little. The king had a laissez-faire attitude, but Erdwulf could tell it was put on. He glanced at Rosalba, who had dealt more with the wild hunt than he had. She gave a subtle shrug. It is good to see you as well, Your Majesty. I wonder, where is your charming wife? Oberon swallowed the wine. I do not wish to discuss it. Is she well? Asked Erdwulf. She is mad, said the king, before slugging back another swallow of wine. Mad? I said I do not wish to discuss it. Erdwulf sat down at the table near the king. Of course, Your Majesty. As the king finished another glass of wine, he spoke. My wife found an abandoned human baby tonight. She wants to keep it. Well, Erdwulf chose his words carefully. Human babies are rather lovable. She wants me to consent to being this infant's father, the visitor scoffed. Humans have done nothing good for us in Fairy. They pollute our air and water, tear down our trees, poison the land with their greed and selfishness. But it's only a baby. The child hasn't done anything. You sound like my wife's ladies, snapped Oberon. I will not be the father to the human. I will only call myself a father to a child of Fairy, one of my own blood. Erdwulf, tired of the slander against his charges, spoke his mind. Then perhaps you should have given your wife a child of her own blood a long time ago. You live a safe life here, Erdwulf of Evermore. You do not understand. I understand perfectly. Erdwulf faced the king. I understand the danger better than anyone, but the heart knows no danger. It will dare anything for what it loves. And if your wife loves this baby, there is nothing that will persuade her to give it up. I am her husband and king. I will be obeyed. That attitude means you're just a tyrant, barked Erdwulf, and tyrants can be disobeyed without fear. Oberon slumped in his chair. He hadn't thought of it like that. He laid his head on his arms and shook his head. Leave me, all of you. I would be alone. Erdwulf, hot under the collar himself, was the first to leave, followed by Rosalba, who took the wine and left a decanter of water in its place. Erdwulf looked over his shoulder at the members of Oberon's court. Make yourselves comfortable, gentlemen. I will assume you will be here a while. The ogre continued to make his way up toward the outer door. Erdwulf, where are you going? Asked Cullen. I'm going to see Katrina. It's nearly morning by now. I need to speak to her. Clear my head. He turned to his second. You have her telephone number. Call if there's any trouble. I will stay at her home until nightfall. Cullen reluctantly nodded, then went with Rosalba to organize their visitors. The sky was turning grayish ahead of the coming dawn. Erdwulf sped off from the door, making his way overland toward Katrina's house. He crept to the back door to see one of Queen Persephone's ladies in waiting, taking the queen's unicorn towards the woods to hide it. Oh no, he thought. The queen must be hiding out here. He crossed to the veranda and knocked. Katrina opened the door and gestured for him to be quiet. The queen and her ladies and their pets and the baby are all sleeping, she whispered. Erdwulf looked around the kitchen. All the cats were sleeping in a big cuddle pile by the sink, and the owl was perched on one of Katrina's dining chairs. Erdwulf came quietly into the room and cleared the way for the lady-in-waiting coming behind him. Erdwulf knew her as Aline. Pardon me, madam, he said to her. Isn't it a bit late for you to be out, Erdwulf of Evermore? She asked. Perhaps. You go get some rest, Aline, said Katrina. She led Erdwulf to sit against the empty wall across the room from the sink. This is the best we can do for privacy. I gave my room to the queen and the baby, and the living room to the ladies. Airwolf nodded. How is the baby? Healthy as far as I can tell. And she's a beautiful, beautiful child. Titania won't let her out of her sight. Katrina shifted uncomfortably. I ought to call the police, but Titania is so in love with the baby that I'm scared she'll do something crazy like kidnap her if she's taken from her. Would there be any real harm in letting her keep the baby? Katrina sighed heavily. Well, for one, if I don't tell and it gets out, I could get in trouble. King Oberon is at Evermore now, and... What? It's all right, Rosalba knows him, and she's handling him. But he believes the child should be with her own people. I agree that she should at least have contact with humans. Katrina leaned back against the wall. What are we going to do, Wolf? I've been thinking so hard my brain is sore and I'm so tired. I've only had about 2.5 hours of sleep. Airwolf put an arm around her shoulders. I know. You have bags under your eyes. Here, put your head on my shoulder and try to sleep for a while. Are you sure? Yes, sleep. I'll watch over you. Katrina, thus assured, laid her head on Airwolf's shoulder and drifted off to sleep.